What is going on, Nuggets Nation, NBA fans? I'm Tom Leuthner. Welcome back into Nuggets today. I hope you guys enjoyed your 4th of July. And we have some quick topics to cover. We are officially one day out from every deal being finalized. So obviously there's a couple, things in the air right now for not only Denver, but majority of the NBA. And that first thing is the talk around the NBA about certain teams being interested in a certain point guard. And this is somebody that we've covered. He's a veteran. Has his injury history, but that is Malcolm Brogdon. Now, Denver has shown some interest in Brogdon as a backup point guard. I know that right now Bruce Brown on the depth chart is technically a shooting guard, but will be running the one off the bench for Denver, and the backup is Jalen Pickett. Now, I've covered Brogdon. I think that Brogdon, it would be a very good pickup for Denver, but I also get nervous with his injury history because we can't afford right now to go out there and play around with players who could work if they stay healthy. And I know that's a conversation also for DeAnthony Melton, but it does make me a little bit nervous. Am I more nervous about bringing in Brogdon than I would be with Jalen Pickett and getting legitimate minutes? Not really. I think that a lot of fans in Denver think that Pickett is a very good role player, and I just don't think I've seen that. No disrespect to Jalen Pickett. I've covered this so many times. I know he's had his triple-double. I know he's done his things. But I don't see Pickett as a number 2, maybe even number 3 option right now on a championship team. And I don't think there's been much proven. Now, don't hate me for that because I would rather have a rotation of Bruce Brown being the 3rd-string point guard, 2nd-string shooting guard, or I guess small forward, and having a guy like Brogdon there. There's also talks about other people around the league, and that's something I'm going to get to. Now, do I think that Brogdon would be a good fit as a backup in Denver? Sure. I think that he's been a good fit in majority of the places he's gone. He just cannot stay on the court, which is what I'm saying makes me a little bit nervous. There are also some other, names being thrown around in Denver right now, and obviously there's an interesting report that I had not known about, and that is from Ryan Blackburn, that supposedly under the new CBA rules in place, Denver would be able to trade their MLE if it were received 4 players just to help other teams clear some salary cap. So there have been some names that were, options if that were the case. Names like Andre Drummond, Isaiah Stewart, Mitchell Robinson, or the most recent name being thrown around those talks, and that is Goga Bitadze. Now, I think Goga would be an amazing backup center. I really do. I think that he has the potential to fit in Denver as a backup very well. The only reason that Goga's name is being thrown out there now is that Orlando's listening to calls for Goga because they just signed back brother of Franz Wagner, Mo Wagner, who was coming off an ACL tear. They declined his option, and I believe somebody had said he has a no-trade clause in his contract now, so I think the only player that they can really move on from that would make sense is Goga. Now, I believe Goga's on the same contract that Zeke Naji's on. That's an $8.88 mil. I don't see them taking on Zeke Naji's contract, but I do have to do a little bit more research on that take that Blackburn had said, because I think that may just mean that Denver could send over the MLE cash considerations, maybe throw in a pick or 2 at that point, a pick swap and a regular pick, and be able to pick up Goga's contract while the Magic are able to get that sort of cap off of their books, and it would work in both favors. Obviously, the Magic have 3 bigs, or 4 bigs technically right now. Denver has 1 because of somebody that we're going to get to in a little while, and like I said, I think Goga would be a great backup for Denver. We just need somebody to get those minutes who can actually come in and just give Jokic a breather and put up quality minutes and not be a liability. Now, with some reports coming out, some reports still are unspoken, and some of these reports that are unspoken are about a guy that I would personally love. Now, like I've covered in recent episodes, I am in a lot of Nuggets community chats, and there's one specifically on Instagram right now that is super alive, and I think every day there's text about who we should bring in, guys that we should target, people who are a little realistic, a little unrealistic, but there's one person I brought up today, and that person is somebody who I think is a little hesitant to be a backup point guard, and that's why he hasn't signed anywhere. That is Chris Paul. Now, there's news, again, like I said, I'm going to cover in a second. There's news that we have to get to that would allow Denver to be able to offer more money than majority of teams to Chris Paul. but I also think that Chris Paul wants to be a starter, and that's why he hasn't signed anywhere. Now, I can't tell you how true that really is. Again, it's all just speculation. Reports coming out from guys like Blackburn, Sidery, nothing coming out from Shams. Shams has been a little quiet the last few days, or the last day and a half, I guess. But I think if Chris Paul were to come in and want to contend and play as a backup, Denver would allow that to, be the case, and he would get a legitimate role in a quality offense. I think that guys like Strother, guys like Watson, Tim Hardaway Jr., Bruce Brown would be able to thrive in a system with Chris Paul there as the backup point guard. Now, if Denver wanted to bring in Paul, they'd probably have to offer him a bigger contract than they would if it was, a guy like Brogdon or a guy, I guess there's a couple free agents, but guys like Brogdon, guys like Melton, guys in that conversation, Paul would probably take more money, which means you have to split the amount of cap you have left probably to grab another center, and that's something I'm going to get to in a little while. But I do think guys like Strother, spot-up shooters, guys like Tim Hardaway, catch-and-shoot three-point shooters, they would thrive in a system not only with Jokic at the center, but Chris Paul off the bench. And I also think there's opportunity there for Chris Paul to start if Jamal Murray ever goes down or needs a break, and would be a quality starter. I think that Denver wouldn't, not that they wouldn't take a little bit of a step down, but I would rather Chris Paul than a guy like Vasilij Micic, who I covered when Denver didn't have the money to bring him in. Would I mind Micic? No, not really. But I think that he could be a good player. He played with Jokic, former teammate. But I would rather Chris Paul if the situation were that Jamal goes down at any point. Knock on wood that doesn't happen. But if it were, a guy like Chris Paul would be probably the best option to have there. It's a matter of if he will take a smaller contract and a bench role, or if he wants more money to be a starter somewhere else. Now, the topic I keep referring to is something that we all know, especially as Denver fans, and this is going to be my last take on it, because obviously the news will come out officially tomorrow, or when this episode is aired tomorrow, and that is that according to certain sources, Jonas Valanciunas has officially verbally agreed to go play in Greece. I think it was a 3-year contract. I didn't remember the exact amount of money because I think money there is different than the money here. I know it's over there. It is more than it is here per dollar. So, again, nothing could be really said until Sunday, but I do think that Denver does have some leverage when it comes to that. Not because they don't want Jonas to leave, but there are options on the table. Now, are there many options? No, not at all. But I think, like I've covered, Al Horford would be able to get the most money from Denver rather than Golden State, and supposedly all signs are pointing to Golden State signing Al Horford by tomorrow. And I also think that if Denver does want to go out and get a guy like Melton or Brogdon, they can now split that cap that Jonas would have taken up and go get a guy like Boucher if he's still available. But I know signs are pointing to him going to sign with the 76ers right now. And, Nick Nurse has a little bit of a leverage there because he did coach him, did go to a finals and win it with him. So, I mean, if Boucher's still available, and if a guy like Malcolm Brogdon or DeAnthony Melton are still on the table, and you're able to split what would be one contract thrown at Al Horford into 2 players, I don't think that's the worst thing, because now you have more flexibility when it comes to what your team is able to do. Now, Boucher, we've covered it, played less minutes than Al Horford, scored more points per game. I know that Horford had more rebounds, blocks, assists, but again, 10 less minutes per game, but he was also a super efficient shooter from the three-point line. He's a little bit quicker. He's a lot younger. So I wouldn't mind seeing, Chris Boucher and a guy like Brogdon or Melton coming in together. I know the community that I speak to every day does not agree with me. They would rather Horford. But if you're able to bring in 2 more guys and give Denver the amount of depth that they haven't had since the championship, I think that would be the best case scenario. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys tonight, Nuggets Nation, or today, Nuggets Nation. Like I said, tomorrow everything's going to be official, so we'll see who is still on the board after tomorrow, what deals go through, if there's anybody thrown into our MPJ trade or into the Sarge trade, which I don't think there will be, but let's hope that Denver's in a good position with this Jonas Valanciunas news by tomorrow. I will catch you guys next episode. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I will talk to you guys soon.